King Kong vs. Godzilla, heading for their colossal collision, shattering every obstacle that stands between them in the most fantastic rampage of annihilation ever recorded on film. See King Kong stamp Tokyo into the ground, holding a beautiful girl in his grasp. See Godzilla destroy an entire army. See King Kong trapped by the blazing barrier of 1 billion volts. But nothing, nobody can stop the great showdown when King Kong and Godzilla meet to fight for survival of the fittest.
Hounds, welcome to the Classic Horror Podcast, episode 24. Now, coming off the back of our previous two episodes, looking at the original Godzilla and the original King Kong, we're of course doing King Kong versus Godzilla from 1962/1963, depending on which version you have seen. Probably for most people, the American version.
Which explains some of my feelings about some of this movie. Okay, continue.
Yeah, the Japanese version is, I think it's just been released to audiences outside of Japan, but it's extremely, or it was basically impossible to get hold of before this. Off the top, this, obviously we've been doing this series because of Godzilla versus Kong, which is in the cinema in a minute. So I will say off the top, there will be some spoilers for that film if you haven't seen it. But let's be honest, it's a big monster showdown. You know what you're getting. So anyway, let's jump into this one. Michael, first time you had seen this. This is a real change up from the serious nature of the original Godzilla and the original King Kong. So how did you take to it, sir?
Well, one of my first notes was, so this is just a comedy then. Okay. I thoroughly enjoyed it, but like I'm also glad like I actually watched it with a buddy of mine like over Discord.
Oh,
and,
cool.
And we just kind of had a ball like cracking at it, and not full MST3K status, but like just being like, did Godzilla just wait, does King Kong need a pump up? He literally pumped himself up.
Yeah.
Like,
Did you watch the American version or did you watch the Japanese version?
I must have watched the American version because so much was in American English.
Yeah, right. So that is so for those that don't know, so this was the actual history around this film and how this come to be is probably a lot more fascinating than the film in all honesty, which I'll get into.
Scott, because I don't know shit about it.
Right, we're getting to that in a bit. But in terms of the two versions, there is this was a co-production between the States and Japan. It wasn't like the original Godzilla where it was, purely a Japanese creation and the Americans took it, added a few things to it. This was a co-creation, but there was always going to be a re-edit for the American version, which, like I said, is probably the version we've all seen. It's the version most widely available, and up until recently, I believe in that giant Criterion box that I keep referring to, it wasn't really available outside of Japan. The film isn't too much different. It's the dialogue obviously is translated a little bit different, but the main bit that is in the American that isn't in the Japanese version is the weird like exposition stuff where you've got like
all the newscasts.
All the newscast stuff where they're just explaining to the audience exactly what's going on.
Now, so some of that was fun, but some of that I was like, what are these? You're putting the wrong emphasis on the wrong syllables here, people.
Right. It is fun. You said fun, and that's it. It's fun. Like this whole film is fun, but it was designed to be like that. The Japanese version is fun. Obviously, there's music change. The score is completely different in both of them, but it is fun. It is fun, and it was meant to be that way. So when Toho wanted to jump on this and make this, they didn't want to make a serious Kong film, and from what I understand, it's because the age of the average Godzilla fan wasn't an adult anymore; it was a kid. Godzilla had become a kid's thing, and somewhat with King Kong too. It was all advertised at kids now, so they wanted to make a film that was for kids, that was more satire, that was definitely more comedy, which at the time was hugely popular in Japan. It was very, very popular. I think on that level, look, there's some terrible stuff. I think the Kong suit is one of the worst suits I've ever seen, especially against a Godzilla suit, because I think the Godzilla suit kind of holds up. But
I'll give you that, but also like I was kind of impressed with the level of articulation in its face a few times.
what, the King Kong?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's.
I'm not saying that it was a great. I'm not saying like it was amazing, but I took the note that like I appreciated the articulation in some of the close-ups.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I believe some of the close-ups might have been stop motion animation
One or
of
two for
Kong's
sure.
face, of
One
Kong's
or two
face.
for
Yeah,
sure. Yeah.
and that incredible scene where he's fighting the octopus,
Oh my
which
god.
is like the
When it's
stuff
just a
where
real ass octopus on
right,
a
right,
miniature set,
right.
I was like, yes, please
Oh,
more of
dude,
this.
some of that is so before its time as well. Like where they're rear projecting it with the
Yes.
real actors in front of it. Like it's
There's some
incredible. It
really
looks
good rear
so
projection
good.
in this film.
It looks so good. It really does.
I'm gonna
Once
touch
Kong
upon some
starts
of it
fighting
later
it,
for sure.
falls apart a little bit.
Well, I mean, yeah.
But
But
yeah,
I don't
that's
know,
suit,
man.
man.
Like,
Not
yeah, like I had
not
a lot
fun.
of fun with a lot of it.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what it is, right? It really is fun. So I'll tell you what, let's just get into some of the history of it, as you said you want to know about some of that. So famously, Ray Harryhausen, it is said, does not like the Godzilla stuff because of the suit and all because of that,
Right.
right? So actually, it's a little bit more complicated to that, and it's completely to do with this film. So as we touched on in our last episode,
Wait, this specific film?
this film, yeah, this exact film. So the amazing King Kong, the original effects of King Kong, the original, that was done by a gentleman called Willis O'Brien, who Ray Harryhausen's mentor. And unfortunately, after King Kong, he kind of didn't get too much work. Like he got a bit of work, and there's story. He had a lot of tragedy in his life, and there's some stories of like he was kind of shunned a little bit in Hollywood because for King Kong, there's a story about they were going to give him an Oscar for it, I think, something like that, but he refused to take it on his own. He wanted an Oscar for everyone on his team, but obviously they weren't going to do that.
They
So
didn't appreciate that.
yeah,
Okay.
so he I don't even think he accepted an Oscar for it in the end. He later did accept for Mighty Joe Young. But anyway, he wasn't really, getting too much work, or definitely the Ray Harryhausen has said like the amount of ideas and the amount of stories he had that just went nowhere or just got shot down, is he has no idea how he like survived that. So to get himself a project really, and to revisit his most successful creation ever, he wanted to do another King Kong picture. And bear with me, he wanted to do King Kong versus Frankenstein. Now, this wasn't going to
Okay.
be the Boris Karloff Frankenstein. It was going to be a much bigger Frankenstein, but it
Well,
was going to be a
clearly.
spin off. Yeah, it was going to be a spin off of that. So this went through a couple of rewrites, and eventually the Frankenstein name was thrown out, and it was King Kong versus Prometheus.
Oh,
And
okay. Okay.
Prometheus
I'll
was to
accept this.
be a creation by a descendant of Dr. Frankenstein.
Nerdy
And
sidebar.
yeah,
Are you a pen and paper role playing game fan at all?
no.
No.
Not that I'm not a fan, but yeah, I've just never really got into it, to be fair.
So the everybody knows Dungeons and Dragons.
Of course.
The second the one that everybody knows who's into that kind of thing is a company called White Wolf, and they do Vampire the Masquerade, they do World of Darkness, and they have one called Promethean. And
Okay. Okay.
it's a pen and paper RP where you are playing a Promethean, and like a good ending in a campaign here is where your character dies, because even if your character doesn't look like a fucked up monster, people are naturally off put by you and they don't know why.
Okay. That's interesting.
And
Yeah.
it's anyway, it's so if you ever, if you're a pen and paper role playing person and you want something dark and weird, look up Promethean.
Check it out. Yeah, sounds good, man. So the story was going to be that King Kong and Prometheus were in a zoo together, and then they would break out of the zoo, and then the fight would ensue. And this was all to be, the both the monsters were to be stop motion animation by Willis O'Brien. He basically shopped it around, and it fell into the lap of a gentleman called John Beck, who was a Hollywood producer, and he liked the idea and started getting the screenplay put together for it. There was a couple of rewrites for it, but it turned out that stop motion is very, very expensive and
The heck you say?
is pretty slow going, so no American studio wanted to touch it.
I have no idea.
So
Continue.
he wanted to make this film, but he knew it wasn't really going to be possible in America. So off he goes to Japan and to Toho, and he pitches to them. Now, they have no interest in making a film with Frankenstein, but they quite like the idea of King Kong fighting one of their monsters. So who are they going to use? They're going to use Godzilla.
Well, naturally.
Now, to make this as cheap and as quick and as cheerful as possible, as they do with Japanese films, they decided stop motion is out, and this is now going to be two men in suits duking it out. Now, here's the problem. During none of this back and forth did Willis O'Brien know any of this was going on. So obviously he doesn't own the rights to King Kong, and though he come up with this idea that spawned this, he had no right to it. So he would later on find out that John Beck had taken his idea all the way to Japan, and it was now a Godzilla versus King Kong film with men in suits that had very little stop motion animation, and he was not to be involved in it in any way, shape, or form. That is where Ray Harryhausen's distaste for these Godzilla films come from. It is purely because they screwed Willis O'Brien out of this idea. As I said, the history of this film is somewhat more fascinating than the film itself. Which, yeah, I mean, can you imagine if we had got that, a kind of like King Kong versus Frankenstein stop motion Willis O'Brien masterpiece?
That would have been one of the greatest things of all time.
Yeah, insane.
It just would have been.
Let's get into the film. So, first time you had seen this, what did you think, man? How did it? You said about you were struck by the comedy. It was intentionally a comedy. So yeah, so I think that bodes well, right? So yeah, dude, what really stood out for you, and what did you really like?
Well, on the comedy side, and the thing where even if you don't particularly get that it's supposed to be a comedy in general, if you don't get that you're watching a full-blown comedy when a mustache glasses doctor shows up, then you don't understand cinema. Like,
yeah.
That dude is over the top camp gold, and I was on board. I was fully on board. That guy was awesome.
Yeah, I hear you, dude. Yeah, he is awesome. Yeah, he is like the real through line of this. And it should be said actually that the whole TV angle of this come from the master himself, Mr. Honda, who made the original Godzilla, is back to direct the Japanese parts of this. And
really, now I must see this.
Yeah, so he wanted to make another straight Godzilla film, right? That's what he done. He was interested in straight, monster films.
I'm okay
And
with it.
he hadn't made a Godzilla film since the original. He went off, he made some other films.
How many had there been between? I don't know. Probably a lot, right?
A few, yeah. Not too many, I don't think. Like not what it become. Yeah, there were definitely some, and there were obviously a lot of other monster films during this time. That's where a lot of like Godzilla's foes like got their own films and stuff. But he hadn't returned to Godzilla. He had gone off and done some other stuff. He come back, and he was interested in doing another Godzilla film, but basically a straight Godzilla film. He wanted to make another straight monster film. Toho were not interested in that. That wasn't selling. As I said, the age of Godzilla fans had dropped dramatically, so they wanted a comedy for kids, right? Honda
So
was
even though that's what he wanted to do, he didn't get to. So we'll
no,
never see that
no.
version.
Well, see, the thing with Honda is it is said that he was the ultimate company man. If he was told to do something, he was going to do it,
Okay.
and he wasn't going to
Uh,
kick and scream doing it.
okay.
So the genius of him is he thought, okay, they want a comedy. How do I turn this into a comedy? Now, he also, I believe, done a lot of TV work, or definitely knew people that were in TV. And TV was really taking off in Japan at the time. And one of the kind of problems that a lot of creatives in TV in Japan were having at the time was the idea of making TV purely to sell adverts. So that's where that whole idea comes from in this film, is that, you know, they're going to go and get King Kong to be their like mascot or whatever, and you know, it's this ridiculous idea of like selling TV ads, and you got the whole TV company in there and stuff. And that was basically Honda putting a little something in there, you know, putting his stamp in there rather than making this like kids monster film. He
I
always
mean,
put
it
a little
definitely
something
felt
in.
satirical. Like it didn't
Yeah,
feel too.
definitely,
Like yeah, okay,
definitely
so I
works.
get that. So are you saying they lean into that more in the Japanese stuff?
Yes. Yeah. So they
Okay.
definitely lean. Yeah, but well, that's the whole film. In the Japanese one, that's the whole film really, because you don't have those newscaster bits where they're explaining what's happened, and like those newscaster bits are focusing more on like the army and stuff, right? Like how it's
Yeah.
all positioned with them, where it's basically told all from the point of view of the advertising guys and the TV guys in you've obviously still got some of the army stuff, but that isn't the most important stuff. That's definitely more American, which makes perfect sense when you think about it.
Well.
Yeah, you know. But yeah, dude, it definitely works. I think on the comedy element, I think the cast are brilliant at that. I think a lot of Asian cinema does that type of comedy better than anyone. That like walking that thin line between serious subject matter but delivering it in a comedic way and not falling flat on their face. I think
Yeah.
that really, really works. And actually, I think there's a very, very interesting film there outside of the monster stuff. I don't even think you need the monster stuff to sell that stuff. That's just the added bonus, isn't it? But
Definitely. Yeah.
we are talking
I
about a
mean,
monster
I
film.
was gonna say. Well, that very much so.
So how
And you
did
definitely get that. You definitely get what you're there for.
there you
You get
go?
the title fight, and it's not a Batman v Superman 5 seconds.
No, that's true. So how did that hit you?
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it, but it was a little tonally awkward at times because it was like serious in as much as you can take two dudes in rubber suits fighting seriously
Yeah.
fight, and then there was occasionally a comedic bit, you know, like the
Yeah.
whole God or you know the whole King Kong pumping himself up to the point where you hear like a gluck, gluck, gluck,
Oh
gluck
yeah.
while he's doing
Well,
it. Like
so they on that note, you know, the whole electricity thing, which has got nothing to do with King Kong, right?
no.
That's a holdover from the Frankenstein thing.
Oh, okay.
That's
I'll
why
accept
that's in
this.
there.
This makes
Yeah.
sense. This makes sense.
So that's just a holdover from that version of the screenplay. Is
But
that the
it
electric?
also allowed us to get the glorious shot of him chewing on the cords.
Oh man,
That was
it's yeah.
him chewing on
It's
those giant wires was amazing.
if in my opinion, if this film falls down anywhere, it's on the King Kong stuff.
Yeah.
Like I think the King Kong stuff is the weakest of it all, in the idea that this is the first time you had ever seen King Kong in a suit, in like a man in a suit. It had been stop motion before this.
Hmm.
I don't think they really had that down. They didn't have the look of the suit down. The movements of the actor in the suit, I don't think really work. The whole like waving his arms in the air. And then they obviously do the weird thing where in the wide shots of the guy in the suit, they extend his arms, but
Oh,
then
right.
you can't do that for the fight, right? So all of a sudden his arms get really short for the fight compared to what they were previously, which is weird.
It was so weird.
But the
Yeah.
Godzilla stuff they got down, because that's all Godzilla's ever been. Godzilla's
Right.
only ever been a guy in a suit. So I think that's down. Like the suit changes a little bit. And oddly enough, funnily enough, this film was such a success that if you ask kids or anyone to draw Godzilla, it is said that they are going to draw something closer to this suit than any of the other films,
Okay.
because there are adjustments in this suit compared to the previous ones, that this was just so popular. This is what people see as Godzilla. So like the arms are a little bit longer, the claws are white, I think, in this suit. He doesn't have any ears in this one. He had ears in the other one. So it's just like little things like that. The little things they took away, and the way they adapted. So, and then also it should be noted that this is also the first time anyone had ever seen Godzilla or King Kong in color. Right? Their films had only been black and white.
Wait, seriously? This is the first color for either of them?
Yeah, it's the first color for either of them. Yeah, because none of the Godzilla films had been produced in color up until this point, and the same, and definitely the same with Kong. Right? You'd only had 2 Kong films up until this, and both of them were black and white. And yeah, so this was the first time. So that no one really knew the true color of Godzilla's scales. Most people thought they were green based on posters for the first film.
Right.
There were a lot of posters, where it was like green, but actually it's that charcoal grey. And also, most importantly, is his atomic breath. It's the first time you see that in color, and it's the first time you see his fins light up in color.
Yeah.
So yeah, so the idea of what we really idealize as Godzilla today really does come from this film, oddly. So that's why I'm saying I think the Godzilla stuff was down. They had the Godzilla stuff. The Godzilla stuff really worked. I just think the Kong stuff falls a little bit short, unfortunately. I just don't think Kong really works as a guy in a suit.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, because I mean I haven't seen the one from the 70s, but
Oh, Rick Baker one.
right.
The suit
Right.
is incredible because it's Rick Baker, but it still doesn't
But
really work. And I think Rick Baker
I
did
heard
things the
I heard
same.
a podcast with him where he told an extended story about the agony that was making that film. So
Oh yeah, he
it's
hates it. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. There's a great special feature on the Peter Jackson Kong where, because Rick Baker plays one of the pilots that shoots Kong down at the end of the film.
Really?
Yeah, he's one
Okay.
of the pilots.
I'll
And
recognize this time. I wouldn't have last time.
there's a bit on the special features where Peter Jackson, because Peter Jackson plays one of the pilots as well, and as they're going in to shoot that stuff, he says to the camera, like, Rick Baker has a weird connection where he played Kong and designed a suit, and now he gets to kill Kong. And there's this just really great moment where Rick Baker just looks so deadpan at Peter Jackson. Was like, yeah, I wanted to kill him in the 70s too.
Nice.
And it's just like this most pissed off Rick Baker, like, yeah, I hate that film. Yeah, so good, man.
If you've
So good.
if you've ever seen him speak for an extended period of time, you can see him do that too. You
Yes,
can see
yes, you can.
you just see him say that.
Yeah, yes, you can. Yes, you can. So something else I want to touch on is we both have a real love for miniatures, and I'm going to put my flag in the ground and say this film has the most blatant use of miniatures in any film I've ever seen. And by that, what I mean is most films do quite a good job at blurring the lines between the miniature stuff and the real stuff, right? Let's go back to Peter Jackson's King Kong. Loads of miniature work. You can't really tell
Is
where
there?
it is. Yeah, loads of it. Loads of
Okay,
miniature work.
I believe you.
They
I haven't gone back to it yet.
famously, Weta said that they built more miniatures, more detailed miniatures for King Kong than they did the whole Lord of the Rings trilogy. Nolan uses incredible, and I know I'm talking about modern day stuff, but you just go back and watch a lot of the Godzilla stuff, right? Loads of miniatures, but the lines are blurred quite well in some stuff. Look at a lot of Ray Harryhausen stuff. Loads of miniature work.
Mm.
It's blended quite well. In this, no real effort in blending it. Like you can tell, like that. It's all. But I tell you what, I'm saying this with a huge smile on my face because I love it. Because it
I had a
feels
ball
like,
with it.
yeah, it just feels like.
If you've ever seen a single episode and or enjoyed Mystery Science Theater 3000, you will love this movie. So it's just a fact.
Yeah, dude. It's like they're great, but they're so obviously like they kind of look like toys in a way.
Yeah.
But what I love about it is literally like, okay, how do you make this big giant monster film for as cheap as possible. And like that's it. It's like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
instead of doing these big army sequences, well, let's just do them with like little toys. And instead of having stop motion or whatever, let's just put two guys in suits.
Who cares? It's just,
And even
and
then, even like
the
with the
backgrounds
guys
don't
in
need to be in
suits,
realistic colors. They're going to be like crayon blue. It's
yeah,
fine.
yeah. Even with like most of the fight stuff between Godzilla versus like you've got some of it that interacts with building, you've got a whole lot of it that's just out in the desert.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
just like forget about the buildings. Let's just have
All
two
right,
guys
all right. So
go
here's
in
what
the
we're
desert.
gonna do, people. We're gonna take an empty building. We're just gonna dump a bunch of sand on the floor. We're gonna put a couple of little plants and shoot. There we go. Sorry.
It's honestly, it's incredible. So I said at the top there is going to be some spoilers for the
Okay, here we go.
current version of this
Yeah.
Godzilla versus Kong in the cinema. Now, the reason, this isn't classic film or classic horror, but we've got to bring it up because this journey all started because I wanted to revisit these films, get Michael to watch the original versions of these films because, we're fans of monster films and that's obviously what got us back to the cinema.
Well, on a real note, that's very true, and also like, oh, a thing that I've been able to say to a couple people that let them know that I'm a little bit the way that I am in a single interaction is like I'm kind of about scale when it comes to a cinematic experience. Like I'm not saying that every movie needs to be seen in the
Oh,
theater.
yeah.
It would be nice if you could, but when it comes to something like Godzilla or Pacific Rim, please, oh my God, please see that in the theater. You need to see that as large and as loud as possible.
Yeah, I hear you.
If it's drama, if it's a bunch of angry white people yelling at each other, I'm not mad at you if you want to maybe check that out at home. But like this kind of a movie, oh please go see in a theater. And anyway, it's gotten people are like, oh okay, I get it, I get what you mean.
No, so on that note, dude, just as a quick comparison, if you kind of can compare them, they're very different films. How what did you think of the new one?
I really, really, really enjoyed it, and I couldn't have been happier that it was the first movie I went back to the cinema and saw, and I saw it in the Dolby Atmos format.
Yeah, yeah,
So I had deeper blacks, I had brighter colors, I had speakers in my chair, and anytime anybody punched anybody else, it was felt in the entire theater, felt literally.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I I was so happy as the credits rolled that tears of joy fell out of my face. Not because it was the greatest film I'd ever seen, but because it was the absolute perfect way to go back to the cinema. And
Yeah, I agree. I completely
yeah,
agree. It was the first film that got me back in the cinema.
no, I was just gonna say like I listened to you and Chris on the other podcast, and you were talking about the local Odeon. So is the Odeon is that like a chain? And
Yeah,
is that
yeah, yeah.
did you see it in a premium format? Was it regular? Or how'd you see it?
Yeah, so the no, it was just like regular. It was like my local doesn't have a IMAX or anything like that.
Okay.
So like Odeon, most Odeons do. Just my one doesn't because it's a bit smaller than other ones. But yeah, I mean, I was just happy to be back in there. Giant screen, really good sound
Mm,
system,
mm-hmm.
and yeah, man, it was good. It wasn't my, I come out smiling ear to ear, but I think it's because I've been back in the cinema for the first
Right.
time in like over a year.
Okay. I'm not saying it was a perfect movie. Like I hear everybody's complaints. I don't agree with a lot of them, but I see where they're coming from.
What
But
are the complaints?
the main complaints I hear is that all the human stuff was trash, and I don't agree that
Okay,
all of the human stuff was
no,
trash.
I don't
I
agree. All of it was no.
I loved Brian Tyree Henry. He was and I know maybe like he rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, but I am such a fan of him as an actor.
Yeah,
Like I don't know
yeah,
if
yeah,
if you've seen If Beale Street Could Talk, but
yeah, yeah, yeah.
his oh my god, like that movie means a lot to me, and we can have that conversation some other time. Remind me, but it was like his scene at that table where he says so much without saying
Yes,
anything.
yes, yes.
Like I was like, who's this guy? And then suddenly he's in Chucky, and then suddenly he's in this,
Yeah,
and I'm like,
yeah.
I am there for it.
I
Like,
like. I don't agree. All the human stuff was bad. I think the native girl that
Oh
Kong
yeah,
saves.
no, she was great.
That stuff great. Like that's the best human stuff.
Well, how
Like
about
the
this?
rest of it
Like
I could probably do without. To
I
you know
guarantee
what? It's not that I could do without. It's that
go
they
ahead.
overcomplicate it. Like the native girl stuff is great. I really like that. I thought she was excellent. I thought
Absolutely.
the interaction with the Rebecca Hall stuff was great. The rest of it, I don't know, maybe I could do without because it isn't so much that it's bad. It's just like I feel like they don't really know what to do with it. So then they overcomplicate it a little bit. Like I didn't really need the Hollow Earth stuff either. I thought that was cool, and I've loved that they've touched
Yeah,
on
but
that
it gave us
from the
that cool
original
floating
Godzilla.
rock thing. Like I don't know. Like I get what you're saying, but I enjoyed that stuff, and I wish I had
I
seen it in
I
3D.
think the thing is I didn't need to see the Hollow Earth stuff. I
Okay.
liked the idea of it more than them going there. And then I think like some of the worst stuff in the film is built at that idea of again, you're putting in this like human drama that doesn't really need to be there
Okay.
of
Well, how about
why
this?
they're
Like
going to
because
Hollow
we're on
Earth
the
and
Hollow Earth
all
thing.
that kind of stuff.
Like the Hollow Earth thing is like during that sequence is one of the 4 times that I picked up on homages, at least in my brain, to the 1963 one.
Okay. Okay. What
So
are the emojis that you picked up on?
so Godzilla's first attack in both films is on a military place.
Yep.
Like you don't know it's a military place in the 2021 one until suddenly it's revealed that it is, and it's just clear that it's a military base in the 63 one. But that's in both films. The way they get Kong back to the mainland
Yeah, the
in
boat
both
stuff. Yeah.
films is on a boat
Yeah. Yeah.
with
Yeah. Totally.
chains, if I recall, in both.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
So in 63, Kong, as we discussed, was could absorb electricity. Now, while he can't do that in 2021, the amazing giant axe that he gets
Yeah.
can absorb energy.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah.
And then 4, during the Hollow Earth sequence, in 63, Godzilla gets a hold of a train and looks into the train,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and that scene was very reminiscent of the scene that homages the King Kong ride when Kong grabs the whatever the Hollow Earth
Yeah.
ship and looks into it right before crushing it.
Yeah.
And that what one of the notes that I took that made me giggle was the design of that ship. Like I imagine the pitch meeting going something along the lines of, "All right, what are these ships going to look like here? What if Weyland Yutani was owned by Elon Musk? Uh,
Yeah.
Go. That's what we need in this
Yeah.
movie."
Yeah. See, that's the stuff I didn't. That's the stuff I didn't care for.
No, I
Like
get
I
that.
didn't need
Yeah.
that. Like them going to Hollow Earth and all that kind of stuff. Just didn't need it. Like I love the idea of the Hollow Earth, but I tell you what, I thought the Godzilla vs Kong stuff was really good. I love that they basically all the way through it kept Godzilla as the main alpha, which yeah, he would
I
be.
mean, it's kind of clear.
Yeah, it
It
would
is.
be. Spoiler. I mean, well, it's kind of in the trailer, and it's been ruined by toys beforehand. But spoilers: the Mecha Godzilla stuff.
Oh, see, I managed to avoid that spoiler. I didn't know that going in. When that
See.
happened, I
Oh,
was like,
okay.
"Oh my god!"
See that, like, it kind of worked, but I think you kind of could
I
have done
didn't
without
appreciate
it as
the.
well.
I just like I didn't appreciate the angle that they took it, where it was like, remember that movie Pacific Rim? Let's do that.
Yeah, yeah. I just didn't like Mecha Godzilla as like it's been around forever. Like it's a stable in Japan, but for this, I just don't think you needed it. I think there was a story to be told with Godzilla and Kong without that. I don't think you really needed that. If you had to have a foe to bring them both down, I feel like maybe don't put all the monsters you put in King of Monsters. Maybe save one of them. Like King Ghidorah would have been perfect as the monster
No, no.
had to be brought down by Godzilla and Kong.
See, but that was actually something I kind of did like. Like they were in the skull. They were in one of the skulls of Ghidorah. Like
Yeah,
I thought that
yeah.
was really rad.
I like the way they connected that. I thought
Yeah.
that was quite cool. But here's my ultimate like thing where I think all of these films except Gareth Edwards one that kicked all this off. I really, really like that film. And I'll tell you why I really, really like that film. In
It was
my
on
opinion,
2014, right? No, I
yeah, the
love that movie.
2014. The reason I love that is I think that is the closest an American Godzilla film has ever come to creating some of what the original represented, where
Which is
every
the biggest complaint that everybody had, which is why I love it too. Yeah,
yeah
100%.
is that it's all from a human point of view of what a monster attack would look like.
Right?
Now, I would argue the greatest American Godzilla film that's ever been made isn't a Godzilla film. It's actually called Cloverfield, and
We will
that's the
talk about this
greatest.
some other time. Maybe we'll
That's the
do a
greatest
whole like
Godzilla film.
fucking podcast about it. Because I hated that movie the first time I saw it,
What?
but I
What?
totally came around on it.
How can you hate it? That is no, I get it. I get some people would hate it,
It
but
was
no,
it was overhyped. It was to me it was
I,
overhyped.
I do.
That's what killed it.
I think it's a, I
And
think
then
it's a masterpiece.
when I had some space from it, and then I came back to it, I totally got it. But
It's
like
one
the
of
first,
the,
I just didn't.
it's one of the greatest American monster films ever made.
It's pretty great. It's pretty
It's,
great.
but it is just taking that whole
Where do you
Godzilla.
stand on 10 Cloverfield? I love 10
Oh,
Cloverfield Lane.
love 10 Cloverfield. Love 10 Cloverfield.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. I love what they've done with it. I love that they
Did you
spent
see
it on
Paradox?
different
What'd you
ways.
think of Paradox?
No, see, I haven't gone back and watched Paradox because I didn't hear good things, and
It's not amazing, but I really liked it, and it had one of the it had an effect because of me. There's one thing in that movie. There's like it's like a visual and just like a like oh my god that's fucked up. Who thought of that shit? Like kind of a thing that I
I'm
think.
definitely gonna watch it.
Yeah, I'm just saying. Like
Yeah,
I think when you do, let me know, and because I think you'll know what I'm talking about.
yeah, I'm
And if you
definitely gonna
don't,
go and
we'll
watch it, man.
talk about it because it's some shit.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna do it, man. I'm definitely gonna do it. But the like to bring that full circle, that's what I feel like they lost, and I kind of get it from a studio point of view because, like you said, that was what some people's complaints were about was that you didn't see enough of
Right. Yeah.
Godzilla and stuff. But to me, that was the point. Like that's what the original represented as well. It was, Godzilla isn't meant to necessarily be the hero that you're following. He's the in that original, he's kind of the bad guy, right? He's like wreaking havoc on the fucking town. But yeah, dude, that's what I feel. Though, like our recent MonsterVerse films after the 2014 one really lack. Even though I quite like Skull Island, again,
That
I
was
think it.
fun.
Yeah,
That was
I
one of
just
the
think
things I
it
thought was
lacks
really cool
on
about
like.
Godzilla Kong though was the way they tied it that to that in quote franchise or
Agree,
whatever you want to call it at
agree.
this point
Yeah,
is that they when there was music involved with Kong, it was of the 70s because that's when Skull Island was, even though the
agree.
movie that we're watching is contemporary.
Yeah,
I thought that was really cool.
yeah, agree, dude. Yeah. Yeah, completely agree with that. So bringing this back round to the 63 version,
Hmm.
I feel in a weird way, as much as I really, really love that Gareth Edwards Godzilla, the 2014 Godzilla, really lent into what the original represented. I tell you what, the new one, the one that's out in a minute, what I do
Hmm.
appreciate about it is it leans into the fun of this one,
Hmm.
right? So if you're building
Absolutely.
off of this one, yeah, I do appreciate that, and I think that's why I did want to bring up the current one, even though it's obviously not classic cinema. But yeah, I feel like if anyone is going to get anything out of this, you go into it. It's just fun, man. You just have a good time with it, right?
Hmm.
This is one of those films you can throw on in the background with a group of friends. Man, you're just going to have a good time with it. Definitely, like more so
It's a total
than
party picture, 100%. Like
100%.
whether or not you are into being intoxicated, if you're just into having fun,
Yeah,
whatever you
yeah,
do to have fun, this should be part of your fun.
yeah. I'm with you, man. I'm with you. I think like there isn't too much to say on this one, and I think actually that's probably a great place to start wrapping it up. Is whatever you feel about it, whatever you feel about the guys in the suits, especially the Kong stuff. Like I said, I think it falls down on the Kong stuff, especially because of the incredible Willis O'Brien stop motion animation of the original.
I
But
mean, come on.
yeah, man, like it's just like that's all it is. It's fun. I think the Japanese stuff is brilliant. Like the just the comedy of it, the way they act it is great. I think the American newscast stuff's a bit weird and could definitely be cut out. I definitely don't think that. I don't even know if that would have been needed in the 60s.
The pronunciations of like, you're not Tarzan or reptiles.
Yeah. On where I am gonna leave that for myself, sir, before your final thoughts, is did you notice, weirdly, despite Ray Harryhausen's reservations about this film, did you notice a little nod to Beast from 20,000 Fathoms?
If I did, I didn't pick up on it.
So it's on those it's on those newscast bit. Well, I guess this is a nod. It might not be, but I took it as a nod.
Okay.
On those newscast bits, they're talking about where Godzilla could be going and when he's diving down deep into the ocean, and they say about him diving into a trench that reaches 20,000 fathoms. Now, the reason I took
I did not pick up on this, or I would have been like, oh my word.
Yeah, well, the reason I took that as a nod is 20,000 fathoms is something that doesn't exist. It was completely made up for that story, right? Like 20,000 fathoms doesn't exist. So I took it as that. I took it as like, oh, it's a little nod. That's a little nod to that story. Oh, okay, that's quite cool.
You're probably right. I would think you are.
But yeah, so that's
the same reason I made the connections between the 63 that we're talking about and the contemporary one.
Yeah, man. Yeah. All right, dude. That's where I'm gonna leave it. Like we said,
all I got to, man.
Yeah,
we're good.
Exactly. There's not too much to say on this one. I'm glad I got you to watch it, especially as we've been able to kind of watch this and then go out and go to the cinema to watch the modern day version. So it's a nice retrospective looking at both together, isn't it?
Definitely.
And we said,
I definitely had a thicker layer of fun because I had so recently watched all of these films together.
Right, exactly, man, exactly. And that's what this is all about. So that is where we will leave it, ladies and gentlemen. King Kong versus Godzilla, 1963. It is a bunch of fun. Go and check it out if you want to have a good time. I promise, if you are in that mindset, you will definitely have a good time. Thank you so much for joining us once again. Until next week, Horror Hounds, stay very, very safe.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.